I had a huge limiting belief on making money. Like I thought I needed a job. I needed an opportunity, and I wasn't the one that could provide that. I was at the mercy of whoever had the opportunity to give it to me, and then I had to impress them enough to get it.
But most people aren't willing to go through that deep level of meaning, to be able to feel the pain of what if, and also feel like the joy or sensation of what if.
I'd left Valuetainment before I had a single client. I did not know whether it was going to work out, and it was scary, and I didn't want to do it because of that. But
well, baby,
a motherfucker whose life is imploded, ain't got shit in life, and says, still gotta fucking get after it today, man. So that's when you move from motivation to driven to obsessed. You gonna stop?
all right, guys, welcome to Grit. My name is Erick Galera. I'm here with Preston Woody, and this show is going to be about grit, discipline, that element that keeps you from giving up even when your brain, your body's telling you to. So a little bit about how this podcast came about, Preston. When I was at Valuetainment, I pitched this to Patrick David, and he looked at it. Well, let me back up a little bit so people can kind of understand my story and how I even came to Valuetainment. So I joined the Marine Corps when I was 23. I go there, turned 24 in boot camp at the Crucible, and my drill instructor made sure I remembered that because it was his birthday too. So I was there carrying ammo cans back and forth for my birthday during the Crucible. And if you're a Marine, you know about the Crucible. So I go in there, become a combat correspondent, and then I get recruited into diplomatic security and go to embassies around the world, get out, 5 years later, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So I go to school. We have the GI Bill, so that's paid for, and I wanted to take advantage of it. So I go to Orlando and I go to Full Sail to learn how to be an audio engineer. And I just did not feel like I didn't fit in. Like I was 29, going to school with a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds, and they're like, painting their fingernails and doing all these things. And I'm like,
That's not for you.
That is not for me. This is not my tribe. And one time I asked my professor, I'm like, how much does an average audio engineer make a year? And he goes, $50,000 a year. I'm like, I'm out of here, man. So one night I'm watching the PBD podcast in my apartment. So I'm eating dinner, and I'm like, I really resonate with this Patrick guy. He, came here from Iran. I came here from Mexico. He joins the Army. I joined the Marine Corps, and then he became a business person. And that was the thing that I did not know how to do. I couldn't figure out business. So I figured if I can intern there, I'll probably learn a lot faster than if I stayed in school. So I drop out of school. I check the website to see if they have any intern opportunities. Turns out they're hiring. And so they're hiring for a low-level position, but I figured it's better than interning. It's better than working for free. So send my application. Next day I hear from his right-hand guy, Mario. And long story short, I end up joining Valuetainment. I'm in Orlando at the time. They're in Dallas. And so I drive there with my 2 pit bulls, hauling my car, big U-Haul, and make the big move, right? And knowing that Valuetainment was going to move to Florida 6 months after that, but I didn't care. So I joined, helped them with social media, and then moved to Florida, transitioned to sales, do that for 6 months. Hated it, dude. Making phone calls and having migraines trying to convince people to buy. And it was something that I've never done before. And something so different from what I was used to.
In what context?
Well, in the Marine Corps, you just tell people what to do. In sales, you have to persuade people to do what you want them to do. So it's a whole mind shift. But when it was pitched to me, it was like, this is a skill that you're going to need, right? Especially if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you're interested in business, you're interested in leadership. So once I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and Robert Kiyosaki. So exactly, talks about the importance of sales and how he did that before. So I do it, and I was lucky because we sat down with Patrick every week and we would talk about the objections we had to handle, right? And so I would say, well, people are telling me this, and then I get stuck. And so we would role play, and then he would give me this like one-liner, and it would work. And I'm like, holy crap, this is really good. And then he would explain the psychology behind whatever he was telling me to do. And so that started changing the way I saw things. I'm still not like someone that enjoys sales. But
you have the capacity.
I have the capacity. I can do it. I enjoy the psychology of it. I enjoy, because it like he was saying, it goes into leadership. It goes into your relationship with your family. I'm sure there's salesmanship that has to do with your wife when you're trying to debate whether you keep your hair, you shave it, or you leave it long, or whatever it is. I saw your story. Anyways, so I do that for about 6 months, and then I get the opportunity to do what I really wanted, which was get into production. They were doing this docuseries called Mafia States of America, and they'd been working on it for 6 months. They could not get the color to look right. The edit was just not where it needed to be. So Mario, again, kind of taps me on the shoulder. He's like, this might be your opportunity. You think you can do this? I've never done this before, by the way. But this aligns more with my experience in the Marine Corps with, you set an objective. You put a plan together and you execute on that. So I just did the basics of what I was taught in the Marine Corps, and we finished that project within 1 month. We had like a 24-hour rotation of editors. We had a morning shift, we had a night shift, and I can't take credit for the work as they did the work, but it was just putting the pieces together.
Like, how old were you at this time?
I am 30 at this time.
So you've been there for a year.
Yeah, I've been there for a year.
So what are you feeling at this point?
I'm like, dude, I love this, and this is exactly what I wanted to do when I came to Valuetainment.
Dialed in.
I felt dialed in, so I was excited, and so we knocked it out. This docuseries had Chaz Palminteri, Rudy Giuliani as well, and of course Sammy the Bull Gravano, Michael Francis. Anyways, it was such a feeling of, man, this is what I'm meant to do. Right. And so from there on, I ended up taking over the production department. We interviewed Tate in Spain before he goes to jail. Then we go to Romania at his house after he gets out, and a bunch of different people throughout, But I got to the point where I felt like I have learned what I needed to learn to do this on my own. So in July of 2023, I started this media agency, moved to Texas, and been on my own ever since.
But that's a huge step. What do you feel like it is that you learned to be able to have that level of confidence to step out of an environment like you were in?
Yeah. I learned a ton. I learned about the business component that I was missing, but the big motivating factor, I think, was the grit component of doing something that was scary. I'd left Valuetainment before I had a single client. I did not know whether it was going to work out, and it was scary, and I didn't want to do it because of that. But I have a good friend, his name is Eder. He lives here in Texas, and he told me,
Eder's the guy.
Eder's the guy, bro. And so he's encouraging me as I'm kind of going through this and debating. He's like, bro, come to Texas, give your idea a shot. If all else fails, you can always stay with me. So you have permission to fail. And so that felt liberating, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I quit on a Tuesday. I fly to Jacksonville on a Saturday to meet with a prospect, and I signed my first client then. So it wasn't even a week before we got our first client. And then for the longest, he was our only client. And then everybody started stacking up after that. But but back to when I first joined Valuetainment in Dallas, the cool thing about Pat was that he would always invite ideas from the team. So we had creative meetings where people were encouraged to say, what shows should we do? What kind of videos should we do, et cetera, depending on what department you were in. And so I had the idea for Grit. I created the logo, created this concept video, and I showed it to him. And, I wanted to interview people that had been in the military, special operations, demonstrated a level of grit in business, in politics, so on and so forth. And he liked it, but he's like, this is not me, man. But maybe we can do this as a social media campaign, created a few videos. They're still on the Valuetainment Instagram. And then it died when I, moved to sales and all this.
So when you were there, is this something that you verbally submitted to him?
Yeah.
And you got to explain?
Well, we met with him every week, so I just showed him the video. I said, hey, I'm thinking we can do a show that's called Grit. It's the same logo. Show him the music, the people that I'm thinking we can interview. And he goes, yeah, no, this is good, but let's do it as social media sort of a thing.
So what were you feeling in that moment?
Nothing. I mean, because it was very often that we would introduce ideas and like 20% of the ideas actually make it to fruition. So some ideas don't even make it halfway. Like this at least made it to social media, but many of my ideas never saw the light of day. Many did. I pitched the idea for Spanish Valuetainment, and that did, that exists today.
Yeah. So at this point, Grit wasn't a conviction of it has to happen.
No.
It was just in the idea phase.
Correct. So it was something that I resonated with. I thought it was cool. I liked it, but it wasn't something I was intimately passionate about and committed to seeing it through. But as I'm getting out of Valuetainment, I'm starting my business. It's been about a year now. And throughout this entire time, I'm thinking I need to create content, but I hadn't really thought of anything that I enjoyed or was passionate about enough to keep going, even after it got, repetitive. So that I didn't want to stop once I started. So it sort of marinated until one day it just hit me. Grit was the thing that God put in my heart, and here we are, man. And so to you, we met maybe like a year ago when I moved to Texas. And what really drew me to you was, number one, your passion for, male excellence. So that was cool to me, and your consistency. So a lot of people talk about this big game on high standards, but they aren't consistent. So I appreciated that about you. And so you're passionate about a lot of the same things. You are consistent, and I thought it was a no-brainer. But yeah, man, tell the audience a little bit about what you do and the, I guess, the goal behind it.
Man, first off, I'm so excited to get to do this with you, and thank you for that compliment, and that you do view me that way. I don't always view myself that way. However, I do realize like our time on earth is very short and limited. And my frame right now is I'm married to one beautiful woman named Dakota. I have 2 little kids, Olivia and Elijah, 2 and 4 years old. And so my frame of life right now is everything that I do has to be very intentional, because this season of life is extremely limited.
Yeah.
And so I don't have margin to mess around. Mm-hmm. Like right now, I have a dad window between 2 and 5 to really get this right. And so like my standards have to be extremely high. Otherwise, I miss this season. So where I got to where I am now. So right now, what am I doing? I'm coaching at a high level. I'm starting a new business called Saints Crown, which is like the platform that I wish that I had 5 years ago. And I always say, man, what sort of business do you start? You start the product or the service that you wish that you had.
Right.
And so it's a tribe of faith-driven men that I help them build their life, produce a framework for their life, get vision for their life, take action toward it, and gain breakthrough. So like I've worked with a ton of guys who have had a 15, 20-year pornography addiction, and it ends in one conversation. So how does that conversation go? So what I do is I take guys through what's called the massive result process. Mm-hmm. And so what I help guys identify and articulate is, number one, is acknowledge that you do have like an addiction issue, and that it is an issue. Because most of the guys, that they do what they do because they have a limiting belief around it. Right. And what's the limiting belief? Like, for example, I worked with this guy, and I said, so you want to stop porn? He said, yeah. He said, why do you want to stop porn? I said, that's the problem. You don't really know why you want to stop. You just know that you should stop, and it doesn't feel good after you do whatever it is that you do. He's like, yeah. So what like, even in that context, most people don't have a strong enough argument not to do it. Right. So what I'll help them do is help him build that argument, so that when that temptation or desire comes up, you have a built-in attorney to shoot down that argument. Interesting. Once it's shot down enough times, then it kind of dissipates. So, for example, what I'll say is, what will happen? Now, I remember asking this guy specifically that I did an intervention in front of a group of about 15, 20 guys. And I asked you, what will happen in your life if you don't stop? What will happen if you don't stop? And he said, well, I'm probably going to get deeper and deeper into crazier stuff because it doesn't just end, it intensifies.
You're saying Diddy didn't start out like that?
What do you mean?
Diddy didn't start out like that?
I mean, we're all on a journey. No, you're not. Nor am I.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you imagine, intensify. We don't know the capacity of where our addictions can take us.
Sure.
And they can take us to dark places, dark Diddy places.
That's right.
So it starts simple of, okay, in the next 5 years, I'm going to be into deeper stuff. I'm going to be messing around with more girls. My self-confidence is going to be lower. And I'm having him crank out all of these reasons.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll put him into that place. Like, close your eyes, go to that place. How old are you going to be? I'm going to be 42 years old. And I want you to imagine yourself, look yourself in the mirror in that place. You're into deeper porn. Your girlfriend's left you, right? And all the things that he's articulated, and he's feeling the pain of that moment.
Yeah.
And I said, do you want to stop now? He said, yes. I was like, no, but you stay right there in that moment. Imagine you keep going for another 10 years. How old are you? 47 years old. So I'll take him through this process of anchoring, like
Right.
is what we call it, of you have to actually feel the pain of
Right.
what not stopping would do. And so from like my background, I'm an ex-pastor. So I take everything from a biblical worldview. And so I read the Bible every single year, and I read through the prophets, and what do the prophets say in Israel? Like a lot of like what they're saying about our nation now is, if you don't repent, change policy, shift, then this is going to happen.
Right.
The Babylonians are going to come in. The Assyrians are going to come in. They're going to take your wife and children, your land. This is what's going to happen. And so what the intent of that to do is to anchor, like, you know what, if we don't change, there will be pain.
Right.
So however, there's that element of it. And then we shift to, okay, what happens if you do change? You've been addicted to this for 20 years. Like, what could your life be like if it was gone? The amount of confidence that you can operate in. And I have him articulate all of those things, like, feel that. How do you feel? And he's articulating the sort of person that feels strong. I feel confident. I feel excited. I'm making more money. I'm making more of a difference. I feel like I can look people in the eyes again, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm anchoring that emotion. And within that conversation, we can develop a plan, strategy, and break that. But most people aren't willing to go through that deep level of meaning, to be able to feel the pain of what if, and also feel like the joy or sensation of what if I did change. So that's part of like what I take guys through. And I would do that one-on-one, whether it be like I'm helping a millionaire go from 1 million to 2 million, or an addict get off of heroin or get off of depression meds. And the process is the same. So I wanted to figure out, how can I scale it? So that's where I started my new company. But how did I get there? So in 2020, I was a pastor, and I'd been like a executive pastor for about 10 years. And I had just gotten married the year before, had a 6-month-old baby. And that's when COVID, when the world kind of got thrown upside down. And for me, I remember one of the shifting moments was a buddy of mine called me. He said, hey man, I'm freaked out in my apartment. I said, what happened? He said, I just opened up my door. This is at the beginning of COVID. And he said, I saw someone hanging by a noose.
What?
And he said, I'm like, this is a football player, jack dude, and he's having a panic attack. And so in that moment, what that was like symbolic of me from is like, men are in despair right now.
Yeah.
And if men, even culturally today, men aren't being built up, they're being beat up.
Right.
And I felt the tug. I felt the tug of, I need to be a part of the solution of building men up, so that if we can save one man from hanging from a noose, then it's all worth it. And so that's when I left everything ministry-wise, my life, my inheritance, my career, and just really aggressively, I went out into the woods for 48 hours. It's not everybody's cup of tea, man. And I was kind of new to it, but I knew that I needed intense sobriety away from the noise to figure out what my mission was for the next season of my life. So I go out onto the woods, I grab my backpack, I have my hammock, and I'm living out there with my notebook. And I'm like writing down questions, and I'm praying. I'm asking God, like, what do you want from me? What's next? What's next for me? Because I didn't want to manufacture it. Like, I wanted it to be real and deep. And so I get back to my vehicle a few days later. I get some of my questions answered, but the one question I didn't get answered was, what am I going to do next for a career? And I had tampered with working with Tony Robbins and was going through his process, but I didn't quite feel right. Like when I left, I couldn't hit the submit button.
Right.
You know that feeling?
Yeah.
Like it's something that you want and it makes sense and it looks right, but something just causes you to stop. And so I didn't click. I get to my car, finally pick up my phone for the first time in 48 hours. My messages populate. The last message at the top was, "Hey Preston, I'm looking for someone to coach me. Would you be willing to?"
Wow.
And I got the answer to my question. And my answer was, yes, let's figure this out together. I didn't know how to price myself. I didn't know the method. I just knew how to pastor people.
Right.
And that one client became 3 clients, became 5, became 10, which led me into my niche. And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to do zero marketing at this beginning stage, and I'm just going to deliver at a high level. And that skyrocketed me into what I get to do now is help men get out of their own way. Because I know what it feels like to be in my own way. I know what it feels like to be on depression medication, anxiety medication, to feel like a loser, to feel like my best days were behind me. And I also know what it feels like to have all of those things eliminated.
So what is the main thing that you've seen in your experience, both in what you've done in your own life and helping people that kind of, it's like the domino effect, the first domino to hit, and then it triggers everything else. Because I'm always interested in identifying what those components are, because if I can get that right, it automatically is going to put everything else in place, or at least a lot of things in place. So what is the one thing that you've identified as this is the like one of the most important parts of someone's life, that if they focused on it, everything else falls in line?
This is where we come into grit.
Okay.
And this and like how we can probably meld in a pot how we define grit. But for me, if you have grit, you're not going to get into that place. And like, what is grit? I think, have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning?
I have not.
By Dr. Viktor Frankl. So it's about this. It's a beautiful story about a concentration camp survivor.
Okay.
And he survived Auschwitz, I believe, and he details as a psychologist his experience of coming off the train, seeing his family and friends gassed and burned alive, and going through the intense pain and process, and observing, because he's a psychologist and he's observing who's going to die, who's not, how it's going to happen, shivering, waking up back to the nightmare again. And so he articulates something really beautiful where he's in the snow, he's working, there's ice in his feet, in his boots, and they don't even fit. They were from someone that died, and he feels like he's at the end of his effort, and then he pictures himself in the future teaching in a lecture hall. And he's telling his account of what he experienced, and he's breaking it down to an audience, and they're taking notes, and light bulbs are going off on people's mind. And then he comes back to where he is, and he's like, I can do this. I can handle this. What did he have that nobody else had? And this is what he articulates in this book, is you can overcome any hardship if you have a strong level of meaning. He had meaning.
Right.
Not just like optimism, but a deep enough meaning to pull him through. So what do I think? And grit is like the power to survive a concentration camp. It's you have meaning plus the beautiful element and gift of movement. If you can have deep enough meaning and consistent movement, then I believe that you can have grit.
That's awesome. So meaning, I think, is huge. One thing that I ask myself all the time, and I ask friends of mine, is what's your why? Now, I've heard like Grant Cardone, for instance, he's like, it doesn't matter what your why is, just win, right? And I think that feels good, but it doesn't last. And so
Probably
when it doesn't last, because we're correct, and then you give up because it's not deep enough. So for me, the why has come through years of really introspection experiences, now I feel confident in understanding what my true why is, and keeps me moving and going in that direction. But it took me a long time. A lot of my friends, I ask them, and they still don't have a clear why. They have an idea of what direction they want to go in, but that the real purpose and meaning, they're still trying to find out, and how that manifests, practically speaking, right? What career, what am I going to do specifically? If I'm going to start a business, what kind of business, what problem does it solve? But one thing that I've noticed that helps anybody, even if the why isn't clear, is high standards, because everybody wants more. But not everyone is willing to raise their standards. And when you hold them accountable to raising their standards, it hurts. And so that's where grit shows up, right? And most people quit. And I have a few friends that, one lives here. I rent out the room to, and then another one I met at church. And so they're young guys. They're driven. They're motivated. They're watching all the business podcasts, the Alex Hormozis, all these things, and they're reading all the books. And they have these big aspirations. And so I found that the Marine Corps taught me that level of grit, and it's something that I'm so glad I went through. And I wish a lot of people got that opportunity to experience, right? Because I'll never be in a position where my standards are so high that if I fail, people die. So when you start to look at life the same way, like there's no reason why we get out and we don't sustain that level of standard of whatever we do, right? Whether it's doing your bed, whether it's, working with a client. Like if you make a mistake, people die. If you just look at it like that, you're going to operate at a higher level than most people. So with them, they're doing this 90-day challenge, and, they both want to be entrepreneurs. So one thing that we kind of agreed on was, you need to read a book a month. And this is something that is not crazy. I mean, we did this at Valuetainment, and a lot of businesses do this. And so they're reading that, and then they have to write a report by the end of the month. But the one component that for me, I had a huge limiting belief on making money. Like I thought I needed a job. I needed an opportunity, and I wasn't the one that could provide that. I was at the mercy of whoever had the opportunity to give it to me, and then I had to impress them enough to get it. So now that I've been doing, business on my own, I see things completely different. So what I'm doing with them is I tell them, you need to wash windows, which is something so rudimentary. Anybody can wash windows. It doesn't cost a lot of money to get the what you need to be able to do this. And you're going to make at least $500 a week. So by the end of the month, you'll make $2,000 without a job, with like no opportunity. You just knock on doors, and then you offer your services, right? But the first month, they're not making money. They're just washing windows for free. So they're knocking on doors, and then they're saying, hey, I'm an up-and-coming entrepreneur. I'm going to start a window washing company, and I'd like to wash your windows for free. All I ask is if you like my service, you tell your friends, right? So what does that do? Number one, they're learning how to be leaders, because leaders oftentimes have to give of themselves. They have to put in a lot of effort. They have to serve without the expectation of receiving anything. So he knows he's not going to get paid. They might give him a tip or something, but it's not expected. He may or may not get the referral, but he's serving, right? Number two, he's learning sales. So if you can't sell something that's free, how much more difficult will it be to sell something that they have to pay for? So they're knocking on doors, cold calling, and these things. So that's what they're doing month one. Month two, now they have to do one house for free and also $500 a week. Month three, same thing, except it goes up to $1,000. And by the way, they also need to wash their car by hand every week, because these are younger guys. So you and I grew up differently. Like I had to wash my parents' car for free. Like it was just a given. I had to wash windows for free just because they were dirty. But, nowadays, like the newer generation, the whole concept of, being out in the sun and doing something that you don't necessarily love. Exactly. It's like, why should I do this? This makes no sense. I can just be in my computer. So they're breaking through those thresholds of uncomfortability. And so I say that to say, when I see people forced to raise their standards, their performance goes up, their ability to produce whatever it is. Like in this case, they're going to know that they can make money without anybody. They'll know that they can take a lot more pain than most people, just because people have a very small, threshold for pain today. So Have you seen that with the people that you talk to? Also, you're talking to older guys, right? So like the newer, younger guys maybe are a little bit different. So I'm curious how you see that.
A lot of my clients are a little bit older.
Yeah.
But with this new business, I range from, I think 23 at the youngest to maybe 65.
Okay.
But in context of what you're talking about of standards is, if I ask a guy what his standard is, he can't tell me most of the time. Most guys don't have standards articulated. Like, and Tony teaches us is everyone gets the standard that they have, right? And everyone has a standard, but it's not articulated. So what is your standard? It's what you have. That's your standard. So your standard is that you wake up at 9 a.m. and then your wife nags at you, and then your kids run all over you, and then you go to work and you come back and you feel unappreciated, and you don't do anything about it. That's your standard, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're dead on. Most guys haven't articulated what their standard is. They haven't what the scriptures call hope. Like scriptures say, like faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you do not see. So most men operate in zero faith. They can even be Christians because they have no hope. They don't have a standard that they're shooting for because they're ultimately why? I mean, it's scary to set a standard.
So how do you identify a standard? So if you're talking to somebody that says, I want more out of life, what are the small things that you can start pointing out where you kind of show them how low they are? Maybe they don't even realize it, but the things that they're doing on a regular daily basis that you're like, this is mediocre or worse.
Most guys, they do not know what they want, but they do know what they don't want. Like, I don't want to be insulted. I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to speak up. I don't want to fail. But most guys can articulate what they do want. And that's the starting place, is articulating what is it that you want? Well, I don't know for sure. Like, I want to be rich, successful. I want to have a good wife. I'm like, okay, well, that sucks. Let's get more specific. What is it that you want? Because we can never get to the meaning part, the motivation part, the why part, until we first articulate what's the result that you want. Because then we can get onto why you want it, which then that becomes the gas hooking up to it. And then we can put actions in place. But most guys don't know what they want.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I've noticed that a lot of guys, well, I see like differences between the older generation and the new one, both good and bad. So bad, we kind of talked about. This generation is a little bit lazy and a little bit weak, but they see further. They see that they can do more. The older generation can't see past going to school, getting a job, staying there for 20 years, retiring at 60-something, 70-something.
The old system.
And then just dying, right? This generation says, you're crazy if you think I'm going to do that because I can do more. I appreciate that about the newer generation, that they're not stuck the way that the older generation was. But it also built character in the older generation to do things that were hard and that weren't as fulfilling, and it took a long time to see the fruit of, right? So one thing, however, that I say that to say, when I talk to, because I'm usually talking to younger guys, I'm not talking to older guys about this kind of stuff. And one thing they'll say is like, I want to get bigger. I want bigger muscles. I want to make more money. I want to have the ability to have a bigger dating pool, to have a nicer car, things like that. So very small things that you can still point out in younger people. Right. But then you say things like, well, you want to be bigger. Or
how big?
Right, or how big. But something as small, how often do you go to the gym? Well, maybe one time. Okay, so fix that. How many days are you committing to? Well, I think I can do 5. And then 2 weeks go by, and every week they miss the 5. So now we identified that you have low standards when it comes to that. And a lot of it comes from keeping your word. If after we identify that you have a low standard in a specific area, we set a plan for what you have to do. And I mean, this isn't something that it's basic. Everyone really knows what they need to do. They just find reasons to say, well, I can't because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And so I think that what happens is people are lazy. And so I tell these people, like everyone I talk to is like, and they're like, no, I'm not lazy. And they get defensive, right?
Yeah,
and I'm
it's
like,
a trigger word.
Yeah. And I say, relax. Everyone is lazy. The mind wants the path of least resistance. So I'll ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you eat and then you put the dish in the sink? when the dishwasher is literally right there?
Daily.
Exactly. Why? Because you're lazy. Now, you might be very developed and strong here.
I tell my wife I just have a different system in place. I let it stack up, then I come bulk it and batch it.
Right. So this is a thing that I learned in the Marine Corps that to me was, I mean, you go into the military knowing that they were going to raise the standards to the like lowest thing. Like your ribbon, if it was like a millimeter to the left, you were terrible, right? And again, because the little details determine whether someone lives or dies. So I look at everything that way. So I'm looking at all these potential wins in everything that I do from, okay, I just, finished eating. I put the dish where it belonged. I went to the gym because I said I was going to go to the gym, even though I got busy and I could make an excuse as to why I can't, but I still did it. So all these eating, like for me, the biggest thing, like I've always been good with training, terrible with like what I eat. And so we talk about another kind of epiphany. I think the biggest vulnerability of people that makes them susceptible to manipulation and just not reaching their goals is being emotional. If you're emotional, it's going to be very easy to manipulate you. And you see this in politics. The left says that, the right is that they're fascists, they're Hitler, they're all these things, right? And vice versa.
What do you mean by emotional?
I am leveraging your emotions against you to get you to do what I want. And
Emotionally pliable?
Correct. Yeah. But the whole point of letting your emotions guide your judgment as opposed to being reasonable and logical about it, right?
Yes.
So, in politics, that you see it with identity politics. You see it in relationships where maybe the husband is a narcissist or the boyfriend, and he's, leveraging the girl's emotions to manipulate her, to do whatever he wants, right? But we see it in big aspects. But what I've noticed is that when you bring it down to the day-to-day, I'm emotional when I am stressed out and I want chips. I want to go get some fast food. I was emotional and I wanted that because it made me feel better. And so now I lowered my standard and delayed my goal, which was to lose weight by eating this, and this that I knew I had to do, right? So a lot of guys will say, oh, I'm not emotional. I'm not, my feelings don't matter. But they constantly don't do what they know they got to do because this other thing feels better. In my view, that's being emotional. Like just ignore what you feel like doing or don't feel like doing and do what you committed to do and what you know you have to do in order to reach this objective. Because again, everyone knows,
my buddy Cole says like what separates a amateur from a pro is a amateur lives by his emotions and a pro lives by his standards. That's the stinking contrast.
Right.
And that's the problem that we're coming back to is if you don't have standards in place, you're going to live by your emotions.
Correct.
Because you have nothing to live by.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be Braveheart, charging with those standards, with that code, with men following them, and to be able to feel that deep level of meaning. But you have to have some dang strong, gritty standards to be able to get to that place. Otherwise, you're going to fall to the emotional level of, wow, this army, this opposition looks big. Let's pack up and go home.
Yeah.
Like we see in the movie.
No, for sure. And this is when you start taking your life into this level of standard, into the little things, right? That's when people start to tell you, oh, dude, Preston, you're too serious, man. You need to relax. You need to enjoy life. Like it's so difficult being around you. And I take that as, a compliment because.
Have you gotten that?
Oh, all the time. I'm a square. I'm black and white. I'm too serious, but.
Maybe we are black and white. It's totally our brand.
Correct. That's right.
You know what? You're right, buddy.
That's right. That's right. But I'm sure there's got to be a balance to it, and there's you have to be. But most people are leaning too far the other way. So I don't think they're going to be seeing any negative side effects from taking their life, in this higher standard type of thing with the little things. Like there's this book, I'm sure you've read about it, or if you haven't read it, you've heard about it. Make Your Bet. This Admiral, Navy SEAL talked about.
I've heard the speech.
So it's based on the speech. If you just make your bed, get those small wins, you'll be able to. You can't take over the world unless you take over the little things. So one thing that Eder also says a lot is how you do one thing is how you do everything, and I agree. I couldn't agree more. So
That was Eder. I also heard that in John Wick,
That-
chapter 4.
Oh,
I think that's what it was.
is that what he said? I haven't seen John Wick at all.
One of the elite bad guys.
Yeah.
That was his saying, and it sounds so bad to the bone.
That's
but if
cool.
Eder says it, then it's probably true.
Probably John Wick got it from Eder.
That's exactly what it was.
But no, it's absolutely true, man. And so a lot of us like to focus on the fancy stuff. I had a friend that was a drummer growing up, and he would say, and he started getting all these gigs, becoming very successful, traveling the world. And I said, what's the secret, man? Like, what makes you better than all these other guys? And how have you been able to see success so quickly? He's like, dude, it's just the basics. Most people do the boop, 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 but they can keep a steady tempo throughout the whole thing. That's my thing. Like, I don't get all fancy, but I'm steady. Dude. I never miss it, you know? And I think that's what it is. A lot of us want like to be fancy in business and all these other things, but the foundation is shit. So it's like, how do you expect to have all these great things if your bed is a mess, like your car is trash, you're eating like garbage, you're fat, you know, like it's not gonna work. And if it does work, maybe you're very talented and you're able to get very far. Now it's gonna not be sustainable. It'll be very shaky to continue that way. So I just see it as an opportunity to win in little things. It gives me confidence to win on the big things too. How do you look at that?
What I was going to ask is, what I was curious about as you're saying that is, I was curious what in your life caused you to shift. Have you always been a pretty disciplined, high standard guy, or was there a shifting point in your life where you're like, this has got to change?
Yeah, I think I had a really hard dad. So my dad was the kind of guy that if I did something and it didn't get done correctly, he would undo it. And he would make me do that again, plus 100 other things. So it was drilled into me from childhood that you got to do it right the first time or else you fucked. So what he would tell me is that he never developed discipline and he hated that about himself. And so he didn't want me to suffer like he did as an adult. So he was extremely hard on me, harder than most probably fathers are towards their kids. That part I'm grateful for. I'm not grateful for not being able to see the example. I think most kids want to see that demonstrated by their parents. I did not see that, but that's neither here nor there. But in the military, when I joined the Marine Corps, I never ran in my life. Like I've always been into weightlifting, powerlifting, and now I have to run 3 miles. Are you kidding me? Like I've never ran at all. And so all these things that I've had to do in the military showed me that I was capable to do a lot more than I thought. So that was another way to raise my standards past what I knew I was, what my capacity was. One thing that they tell you when you join and they give you the whole speech with the drill instructors is that
discipline and spirit are the hallmarks of a Marine. Each of you can become a Marine if you develop discipline and spirit. We will give every effort to train you, even after some of you have given up on yourselves.
That always kind of felt cool to me. Like I never had that of someone that when your brain is shutting off and you got someone still pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. So when you ask when that happened, I think it's always been there. And then the military just turned it on even more.
Do you like yourself better that way?
Of course. I hate myself. And you can see
That's strong. Break that down for me.
Sure. I mean, confidence, I think, comes from this kind of stuff. When you say one thing and do another, I don't think you have that much confidence.
Yes, because you're inconsistent.
Yeah, you're inconsistent. And everybody's going to talk nice about themselves. Oh, I think I'm going to do this. But deep down inside, at least me, because I try to be honest with myself. I can't be inconsistent and feel good about it. So the moment we're having conversations like this,
right,
and I'm dropping the ball here and here and here,
right,
it feels bad.
Right.
And so I want to fix it.
You feel exposed.
I feel exposed, and I feel like shitty. I feel like if things like, dude, if my room's a mess, like simple things, it starts to play in my head. Like now I have this thing I haven't to take care of, and this and this and this, and it doesn't leave me enough bandwidth to focus on the chaos of day to day of business and all these things. I tell this to my friends too, and the reason in the military we were so regimented on everything to the tiniest detail. It was so that we can put all of our brain to the chaos that is, war potentially. So if you're having to remember to do all these things every day and then chaos ensues, you're not going to be able to thrive. But if you are automatically doing all these things and you don't even have to think about it, and you're dialed into the smallest, way to look at it, then a bomb goes off, something happens, you're going to be able to take care of that without dropping everything else you have to do. So that's kind of how I see these things play out in everyday life as well. How do you see it?
I think the enemy of meaning is comfort. And like, why? Like, we're more comfortable as a society than we've ever been in our life.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I came to a place in my life where I found that, like, I was in a career that was comfortable. I was working hard. I was doing my thing, but I kind of had my career path and my legacy and inheritance kind of lined up. It was comfortable in a way, but it wasn't meaningful. And I'm like, why am I doing all of the right things? Like, I'm teaching, I'm impacting lives, I'm making a difference, but yet I'm depressed. I'm having to be on medication. I'm teaching other people how to get set free and be happy and get purpose in their life. And that's working for them. But why isn't it working for me? And I realized, and this was part of my shift, is I'm too comfortable. Because just like Dr. Viktor Frankl in the concentration camp, he doesn't have time to be comfortable.
No.
And his only choice is either despair or meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that's the choice most guys listening are making. Am I going to wake up and am I going to choose the comfort of sleeping an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes? Or am I going to choose what's meaningful and I'm going to get my butt up? I'm going to value myself. I'm going to go lift some freaking weights. I'm going to go dive into the scripture. I'm going to do things that are going to make me strong, because if I don't, like you mentioned before, people will die.
Yeah.
And I have that anchored in my mind. I'm thinking, I've got a beautiful 4-year-old girl. I've got a zesty, intense 2-year-old son. And I realize in the mornings, if I don't get up when that alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and I don't start marching on my mission, because everybody's mission is different, but if I don't, people will die and my children will suffer.
Yeah.
If I don't build the lives of men, fathers won't be as good of fathers, husbands won't be as good of husbands, and women and children will suffer.
Right.
There's a little boy and little girl that are going to suffer because I don't get up today. And I have that anchored meaning, and it pulls me. And that's why I don't often choose comfort. So I think that's the way that I see it, is a lot of us are addicted to comfort.
Yeah, because the mind wants the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
We are all fucking lazy, dude. And it's identifying that, accepting it for what it is. Like, I don't try to pretend that I am above human nature. My brain wants the lazy way. And I need to identify it the moment it happens and then make the conscious decision to say, shut the fuck up and just do what you have to do. So I think life is hard, bro. It's going to hurt one of two ways. It's going to hurt by taking the comfortable way and then wake up at 60 in the same place you were at 20, except fatter, and not as accomplished as you wish you were. Or it's going to hurt a lot in like 6 months, a year, but then you're going to be somewhere totally different in 2 years, right? Or whatever it may be. But you have to choose your heart. A lot of people talk about this. But yeah, I resonate with that a whole lot. The Spartans used to have this phrase where they would say, don't rob me of my poverty. They enjoyed sleeping on the ground because that made them hard. Right. And the moment they started getting comfortable, they'd get weak. So I think we have to constantly, because whatever's hard today, it's going to probably be easy tomorrow because we would have developed the muscle and the capacity. So we have to chase the next, challenge.
Yes.
I think that's huge.
Well said.
Yeah, man. So tell me, what else are you noticing when you're looking at just society as a whole? What is it that, because what I want this podcast to be is I want them to be able to watch, not just be inspired, because I think there's a difference between motivation, inspiration, and then, the practical steps. Alex Hormozi has this, big thing that he says, where it's like, what was it? Mental masturbation or something like that. And it was like, and then, it's like just watching these podcasts about how to be better, self-improvement, you know what I mean? But it's not turning into no application, correct? And then he said he read this book, talked about a wantrepreneur. And then he was like so offended when he read it. He's like, what do you mean a wantrepreneur? I'm not. He's like, no, I kind of am. I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not. And so what I'd like this podcast to be is something where you walk away from and you have the paradigm shift to be able to understand the why and have the practical things you need to implement to see that change. So what are the things that you see, in broad strokes around that people can, start implementing small things that'll make a big difference?
Okay, I'm gonna share from my lens, and then I want you to weigh in on it.
Yeah.
But I'll give two things. I'll ask one question. The first thing is you've got to, if you want to develop grit, because first off, the importance of this.
Yeah.
If you don't have grit in the days to come, you're done.
Yeah.
You're going to be ground into the dust.
Yeah.
And any masculine man's going to feel it in his core.
Right.
Something's about to shift. Like we're recording this in Fort Worth, Texas, United States of America.
Yeah.
And we know something's coming.
Oh, yeah.
And it's bigger than anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And if we don't develop grit now, we're done.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. We don't have time anymore.
So explain that part. Like, why do you think that's going to happen? What's coming? What are you seeing coming that people aren't aware of?
This might be like a whole new episode.
Okay.
However, have you ever read The Fourth Turning?
No.
Or heard of it? Which is in context of a society where we are nearing the fourth turning, which is the collapse of civilization. From a philosophical, scientific perspective, just running the data and the numbers on the patterns in which people are behaving.
Yeah.
Because we are now in a generation of weak men, consumer-based society.
Correct.
And so we are coming to a tipping point where things are about to shift. So I can give you my perspective on a broad lens in context of I think people put their trust in their 401ks, and I don't think they're going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't from a personal perspective. Do I trust government? Probably not. I think definitely not.
Yeah.
I think depending on your political views, I'm definitely not communist. I'll say that.
Right.
And I know that since the 1940s and 50s, we've had infiltration into our government to shift the direction of our government from a freedom-based capitalistic nation to a more socialistic dependent society. And I tell you, by God, it's working. Their practices are working, which is to seduce people into consumerism, identity politics, and away from work, effort, family values. So we have more people getting divorced. We have more families falling apart. We have more fatherless sons, which repeat the cycle. They've got us. They've got us crosshaired. And so what can we do? Like for me, I think that this is the last stand. This is the Alamo, buddy. Like I watched that so much as a kid growing up because it was so inspirational to me. Like it was symbolically, we're in Texas, but it was a couple hundred men standing against an army of 6,000. Like we know that we may die in the process, or probably will, but we are going to hold back the tide, the storm. And that's what I feel responsible for, is we need to hold back the storm for this next generation. It's time to take a stand. Like General Travis gets his sword out. He draws a line in the sand, and he says, whoever's going to stay across this line. And I think this is that moment.
So how can they take a stand?
So here's what I would say practically, okay? Practically, you need to decide that you're going to invest in yourself more than anything or anybody else. Because I believe if you invest in yourself more than anybody else, you will always have something to give.
I work at McDonald's, don't know what I want to do with my life. How can I invest in myself? What does that look like?
You don't have much to give based on like the capacity that you've invested in yourself. So here's what I would do, practically speaking, is you need a power hour. This is like time for you every single day that you do consistently to invest in your spirit, your soul, your body. So here's what it looks like for me. I call it like my first 5. So every single day I get up, I hydrate. I'll drink water. I'll run over to the fridge, drink water, and then I'll pop my AirPods in, and then I'll be listening to scripture. So I have a Bible plan because I want the first thing in my soul to be good things, healthy food, like healthy meat. I don't want it to be mental candy.
Yeah.
So what a lot of guys do is the first thing that they do in the morning, they look and they check their notifications. Boom. That begins their day on a faulty foundation.
Right.
So for the rest of their day, they are trying to get past that dopamine hit that they just integrated into their system. So I'm getting the scripture into my neurology, into my spirit, and then I'll activate. So I'm a weirdo. I have a mini trampoline. I call it a rebounder. And I'll go and I'll rebound. I'll get a lymphatic system drain, flush, and I'll just get my body activated. So within the first 15, 20 minutes of the day, I'm not going back to sleep. I'm alive. I'm ready to rock and roll. So I'll hydrate, I'll activate, I'll integrate, and then I'll go and I'll read, I'll go and meditate. So I'll sit down. And if you don't meditate, then you're going to be thinking everybody else's thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There was a society before where we had the margin to think our own thoughts,
right,
and to be creative. But now most things we go and look up ideas. We don't have ideas anymore. So this is a space where you build out to think your own thoughts and to get clear. So I'll take 15 minutes. I'll sit down. I'll press a timer on my phone, and I'll close my eyes and I'll reflect on what I just read in the scripture. I'll breathe deeply. Remember what it's like to breathe again. Go through that process of what I call practicing stillness. So I can still my soul. Like I can't bring still and calmness to environments unless I engage in stillness and calmness. Like from a leadership perspective, I can only believe give what I engage in. After that process, I'll think of a couple things that I'm grateful for, and I'll just feel the emotion of it. Like I'll be thinking of like that moment last night with my son. Whenever I came home last night, and my son came running into the garage and yelled, "Dad, I missed you!" And he's in his Santa Claus PJs, and it's early November, and he comes and he jumps into my arms and hugs me, and I go and I feel that moment. Like this is a moment that I'll never get back again. He'll never be 2 years old again. And I'll just feel extremely grateful for small moments.
Yeah.
And then from that process, after that, I'll just thank God for that. And then I'll think of one or two things that I want to accomplish for the day. And I just do one or two big things, not a massive checklist, but if I get nothing else done, what are the two things that I want to partner with God to get done today? I want to be a force for God. So God, what to be in alignment with your will? What do we need to crush today? Crush or create. I'll get those two things. I'll get that clarity. Then that's when I'll start my day, and I'll write everything out that I want to do. I'll have that clarity. So within the first, however long it takes you, 15 to 55 minutes of the day, I'm primed. Just like trying to start a lawnmower that you haven't primed yet, it's not going to work. And a lot of guys think that they're broken. Trying to get themselves started up when they just aren't primed properly.
I think that's cool because when I heard invest in yourself, and I think many people might think the way I did, I'm thinking money. Okay, what do I need to buy?
This is free.
But this is free. Anyone can do it at any level. So I think that's huge. And I think it's also important because many of us get so busy in the rat race that we have no time to identify what happened the day before and process what could have done better. Because if you're not constantly looking back and looking at the points of failure that got you where you didn't want to go, you're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. So having you said it's an hour that you take, so it's just 1 hour a day, and it changes everything.
And you can do a 15-minute version of it.
Right.
You can do it in 15 minutes, or you can do it in 55 minutes. Some days I don't have as much margin, but I still get it in because I have to, because I know that without that time of being centered, I'm not very good. I'm not that remarkable. I'm kind of trash. But I need it. Like I need to gain that clarity, that stillness, and like you mentioned, anybody can do it, and you can do that. Whether maybe I won't have, if I'm in a concentration camp, I may not have a rebounder, but hey, I'll find a way. I'll find a way to get centered. Yeah, you can do it. You can do anything. So what I would recommend is figure out how you're going to start your day. Right? How you do anything is how you do everything.
Right.
So how you invest in yourself is going to be the way that you invest in others. And the meaning portion is like, why would you invest in yourself? So that you can have more to give. That's where a meaningful life comes from. Because Erick, you and I, we want to make a difference. Yeah, we want to be successful, make money, have a beautiful family, but we also want to make a difference in our world.
Correct.
And do you want to make a difference? And if you really do, you'll invest in yourself like you do.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'll just add this last thing and then we can wrap up. But You mentioned Tony Robbins. I like Tony a lot too. And he tells a story when there's a group of Marines about to graduate after the Crucible. And in California, you go to this big hill that you have to climb, and you haven't eaten or slept in 3 days, and you've gone through all these challenges, and so everyone's exhausted, but they're all excited because they're about to become Marines. And so the commander's sharing with Tony, like, for a lot of these guys, this is going to be the epitome of their lives. Like, it won't get any better than this. So a lot of them will get out. They'll get fat. They'll get addicted. And they'll, get this job that's unfulfilling. And then he asks Tony, like, why do you think that is? How come they're able to do so much right now, right here? And then all of a sudden, they lose it all. And he goes, it's community. They're in a community. They're in an environment where the standards are raised, right? You can't be here unless you meet the standards. And we're tribal by nature. So a lot of them get out and they just don't have that community. So I would just say find people that resonate with the way that you want to live your life. And you're going to start to see that is going to be much easier to execute, as opposed to hanging out with people that don't see life the way you see it. They're constantly telling you, oh, you're just a square, you're black and white, you're too serious. Keep hanging out with those people. You're going to believe it.
100.
And then you won't be that guy, you know? So do you have any final thoughts?
I'd say I couldn't agree with what you just said more. Like, unless you have like a tribe or a brotherhood of guys heading in, most guys don't, heading in the same direction, raising their standards consistently, then it's going to be extra hard for you.
Awesome.
Extra hard. And so I know you're a tribal guy. I mean, part of like this in my work is I get to be around guys with freaking high standards, and it rubs off on me. And I get to ask them questions and get paid doing it, which is awesome. And even creating an environment like this, like, even walking away, are you going to feel challenged? Do you feel like your standards are raised from this conversation? I do. I certainly do.
Yeah.
And so finding a way to put yourself in an environment like this consistently, where your standards are going to be raised, which is with guys who are on the same path, 100%.
And so, Preston, where can people find you?
Man, you can find me on Instagram at Preston Woody.
Okay.
And that'd be a great starting place if you have the gram, and hit me up on there.
And if you got some guys that are maybe looking for a little bit of a push, some community, some tribe.
I'll tell you what, I'm starting a 21-day challenge.
Nice.
And this is, we'll call it the Sainthood Challenge for guys who want to live their life set apart.
Okay.
And so this is a challenge where we're going to say, all right, for the next 21 days, you're going to do no porn, you're going to do no screen sucking, and no alcohol. And then here's what we are going to do. We're going to do 15 minutes of scripture, 30 minutes of working out, and like 5-10 minutes of meditation every single day. And then we're going to see how your life transforms in the next 21 days. And so I have a group that I'm inviting guys to be in for free to be a part of this, post your progress. And so I'm really excited about it. So if you want a free way to like get a radical shift and then kind of get around some guys from a virtual perspective, hey, let's lock in. You can find that on my Instagram.
Awesome. We'll put the link in the description too, just in case. All right, Preston, I appreciate you taking the time. We'll start doing these on a weekly basis. So, and we're interviewing a lot of interesting people too, which I'm very excited about. So I'll kind of tease a little bit. We got some special operations guys coming over. We got some CIA people coming over. We got some business people coming over. Hopefully some political figures as well. And we're going to have these conversations because I'm very curious. I'm still we are still learning, all of us, right? Because you stop learning, you stop growing. So I'm super curious how these people have gotten to where they are, how they see life. So we'll get a chance to talk to them as well. But all right, brother, I'll see you on the next one.
Great podcast.
Yes, sir. Peace out.
And where down we go.